Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is CraigCrash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. It's finally time. We talked about the Colts specifically last week, but now we talk about the league as a whole in regards to the NFL draft. We're going to talk about who is going to be the most immediate impact players. We're going to do some hot or cold as far as looking at some takes regarding the first round. It's heavy first round stuff today because that's what's going to be kind of the, that's what we want to get into. That's what we want to see. That's what we're excited to see goes. I mean, I know we're not excited as far as like the Colts because they don't have a first round pick, but, it's going to be an exciting Thursday. It's going to be an exciting day into Friday as well. And we're also going to do a mock draft for the top 10. So we're going to get into the weeds quite a bit in regards to drafting. So whether you're watching this, on YouTube, whether you're watching it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening or watching from, we welcome you guys in. It's going to be an exciting podcast, B. Scott. I'm really excited to get into the weeds here draft-wise.
Yeah, I am too. Like I always say, the NFL draft is one of my favorite events of the year, of the NFL offseason. I get really excited for it. I think I'm one of the few people that tend to watch the draft in full, start to finish, or at least I attempt to. Now, having kids and everything, that's not always possible. But
the kids will understand. Just be like, hey, you know what?
Well, hey, I use Time Hop. I'm on a big streak on Time Hop. I've got like over 1,800 consecutive days of checking Time Hop. Yeah, I very dedicated. Now it's like I can't stop because I want to keep that streak alive. But long story short, one of my Time Hop memories popped up today of my son Connor and I watching it 2 years ago when he was just a baby. Of course, he wasn't really paying attention. He was chewing on a rattle, but I was watching.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? One of the lasting memories he'll have for sure.
Remember, he was probably hungry and he was just mad that I wasn't giving him any food.
So that was the infamous Roger Goodell does the draft from his basement year.
That was. Yes, it was, because it was COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, very unique draft. Like, you know what? You know where you were when that famous COVID draft of 2020 was? You were, perched up here, chewing on a rattle, not paying attention to what's going on at all. But no, it was, really excited to get into the weeds here, and talk some draft, because we're going to meet the next generation of NFL stars. That's going to happen.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully it's not a bunch of socks in your stocking this year.
True. It all begins on Thursday with the first round. 8 teams have 8 teams have 2 picks in the first round. That's the Lions, Texans, Jets, Giants, Eagles, Saints, Packers, and Chiefs. Rounds 2 and 3 are on Friday, and then rounds 4 through 7 are on Saturday. That's when it all will wrap up. The Jaguars and Chiefs have 12 selections, which are league highs. I do want to double down. Our videos on YouTube have been popping off here lately. And one comment we had on the which division is the best in football was talking about how could I possibly think the AFC North would be better than the AFC West, and I was like, one of the reasons why I did that was because I still think the Chiefs are not necessarily the runaway favorite, but still the favorite in that division. And now I want to double down on that because the Chiefs have 12 picks. Obviously, it's scattered across the draft. It's not like they've got 12 first rounders or anything crazy like that. But,
that would be the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. They have the ability, though, like, if they want somebody, imagine this. Like, if they want, they can just be like, hey, you know what? Our guy's still on the board. We can go make a trade and go get that. Yeah.
And still have a full handful. We can trade 5 picks for that one pick, and we'll still have a full arsenal.
If I'm the GM of the Chiefs, I'm like, okay, what 5 picks am I willing to, what 5 picks are expendable? Not that I would use them all at once, but what 5 picks am I most likely and willing to trade in order to trade up and get a guy that I want? They could trade. They could end up having 3 first-round picks if they really want. They could.
Well, you do know who is a Kansas City Chiefs front office protege, right?
Ballard.
Chris Ballard. Now, obviously, we're seeing why he covets draft picks so much. Obviously, look, they have 12. That's like a Bill Belichick thing right there. Bill Belichick is the hoarder of draft picks, but Bill Belichick never uses draft picks.
No.
The Patriots just hoard them and then trade them for more draft picks.
Well,
and
what's really
they end up with like 3 players from the draft.
Right, and like that's what's honestly smart about that kind of thing is even if you don't intend on using your draft picks, I mean, that draft capital means something to somebody. So if you can go out there and say, hey, we're going to trade you, a second rounder and a 4th rounder and next year's second rounder for this player. I mean, that team's going to do it because, I mean, that's 3 picks for one guy and we're losing. We need, it's kind of like how the we're not confident the Jaguars won't. I mean, I don't think they're going to trade any of their picks because they need all 12 of those picks. But when you're in a team like the Chiefs, you can afford to be like, hey, we don't really care about these draft picks. We want proven commodities because our window is right now. So we need to make good on that as soon as possible. Now another team who at least thinks their window is right now, they traded for Tyreek Hill. They have the fewest draft selections. The Miami Dolphins, they have 4 picks in this year's draft. Which is wild because weren't they the team that traded with San Francisco last year so San Francisco could go up and get Trey Lance?
I believe so.
So how the 49ers end up in the following year with more picks than the Dolphins, it's kind of wild.
Well,
but I know the Dolphins traded a lot of their picks too in the Kansas City trade. That's why Kansas City has some.
Yeah.
But still though, it's wild to think that.
Well, also wait, no, they also did get some picks here recently for trading Devontae Parker.
Well, I mean that was so I wonder if that article that I read was before that trade then, because if they got more picks, because I can't imagine they had like one pick and then traded Devontae Parker and got 3. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know, but they still don't have a lot of draft picks. Is what we were saying at the end of the day.
For some reason, I felt like they were stockpiling draft picks for a while because they were trying to get into the sweepstakes to trade for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Where did they all go? What happened to them?
I don't know. Well, to be fair, was the Tyreek Hill trade after Deshaun Watson? I think it was.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why they were like, all right, we're sticking with Tua. Well, let's go get Tyreek Hill.
But I wonder, did they lose any? No, they didn't. The whole situation with Brian Flores wasn't anything to lose draft picks over. That's confusing.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Like where did they all go?
They just disappeared. It's
and
like
I'm sure like if we found out, it'd be like, oh yeah, that's right.
It's that SpongeBob meme where we threw out his name.
Didn't they trade or no? That was I'm thinking of the Texans traded away half their team. Because they decided we're going to tank and it didn't work out.
Yeah, so it's baffling. I have no idea how that all works out. But so those are the teams with the most and the fewest amount of draft picks. So it's going to be a fun draft for sure. And so the first exercise that I want to get into here is which players will have the most immediate impact regardless of the team. So basically, who do you think, no matter what, once they're drafted, that team, not necessarily, I mean, most impact, as far as like who's going to go out there and shine pretty soon right away. It doesn't mean they're going to lead their team to a Super Bowl, just who's going to, be, the biggest, presence out of this draft, regardless of what team they. So we're going to do one for quarterback, one, because it deserves kind of a league all of itself, and then one for offense and defense. So, for me, quarterback-wise, I was looking at, impact players. We talked about him a little bit last week as well. I'm going to go with Liberty quarterback Malik Willis. With the Flames, in 2020, they went 9-1. He threw for over 2,200 yards with 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He led all FBS quarterbacks with 944 rushing yards and had 14 touchdowns. I mean, this is a Liberty team that, like, one of the things that I still, I've done a couple of times at least, and still is pretty interesting to go look at Liberty's stadium like 5 years ago, and then look at it today. Like, the impact. I mean, I know it's not all Malik Willis, but I'm saying that like it's wild to like. He took a program that was ascending and took it to even greater heights. As far as
if you think of I just remember when Liberty not too long ago, they were D2, and my first year at Ball State. My first year at Ball State, the second game of the season was against Liberty. And I was like, okay, we lost to North Texas. We got to bounce back against Liberty, have to, and got thumped by Liberty.
Ball State never got thumped by Liberty. It was
but we got beat by Liberty. I remember that. It was a last second thing.
Willie Snead caught the game-winning touchdown. We were doing Cardinal College game day. I'm pretty sure.
No, I wasn't on Cardinal College game day.
I'm gonna look this up because
I swear it was 2010.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it might have been New Hampshire.
No, it wasn't.
All right, we're gonna do some investigative journalism here, live on the fly here, and figure this out. But regardless, I mean, this is a Liberty program that was like FCS D2, whatever it is, and they've gone to new heights since then. And you know, this year for Liberty didn't have quite as good of a season. I mean, they were ranked, a couple of years ago, but this past season. They went 8-5. Malik Willis threw for 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 12 picks. He also had 878 yards rushing and 13 touchdowns. So, I mean, the guy was just all over the field all the time. Numbers improved, even though the team had a regressive year. Is that a term, regressive? There is no Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow in this year's draft. There's no clear-cut best option. I mean, you can make the argument for Kenny Pickett. You can make the argument for Coral. You can make the argument for Malik Willis. Because of
breaking news, it was in 2010, September 11th, 2010, Liberty comes into Schumann Stadium and beats Ball State 27-23.
What game am I thinking of where
Willis... USF?
No. That was not the same game. There was maybe I'm gonna look at that box score when you tell me your impact player. I'm gonna look up Willie Snead, or not Willie Snead's game log, but I'm gonna go look up their games against Liberty because I'm pretty sure Willie Snead made like the catch that I thought, or at least I thought it was a game catch. I don't know. I'll have to look back at what team. Are you sure? And it was 2010, right?
2010. I typed in Ball State football 2010.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I remember I was sitting in the end zone where the grassy hill was. I thought it was a much better view for a wheelchair user than the student section.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, so there's no clear cut. There's no Trevor Lawrence. There's no Joe Burrow. So I'm not just looking at their impact on the field, but a little bit of the impact off the field. And I mean, you talked about it last week, B. Scott, the story of Malik Willis while at the combine, giving it, some of his gear, some of his swag, to a homeless man. And I know there's skeptics out there that are like, oh, I probably did it for, whatever reason. It's like, no, I think
there was nobody around him. That the picture was taken so far away. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Skeptics can be skeptics all they want, but right. We all know.
But that's what I'm getting to. Is I was like, This is a genuine guy who's gonna come into your locker room. He's gonna just be a dude. I mean, he's gonna be, a great impact player. Every story and report that I've seen. From the various podcasts I listen to say he's a good guy. NFL.com compares him to Jay Cutler in terms of arm strength and Jalen Hurts in terms of build and play style. So both are obviously good and promising comparisons. So if there's a quarterback who can go in and change a culture, rally a locker room, turn into the guy, I think it's Malik Willis.
Yeah, I'm going with Malik Willis as well. Because honestly, I don't think I guess when I'm looking at this question, I'm only looking at players that are going to be picked in the first round. And I don't see too many quarterbacks going in the first round, to be honest. I only have two when I look at the entire first round. But Malik Willis, I feel like, has that it factor. He's a guy that gets it both on and off the field. He has the intangibles that you want, a leader. He's got the athletic ability. He's got the arm. And this is going to be a guy that you're going to see teams try to trade up for. In particular, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know when we get to our mock drafts later, I don't have him going in the top 10, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the top 10 because as the round goes on, those quarterback needy teams are going to get nervous. They're going to get real nervous, and somebody's going to make some sort of giant move that will start a run on quarterbacks. And then obviously, yeah, that we'll get into that later. But yeah, I think Malik Willis, when you look at the quarterback class this year, I know people want to point to Kenny Pickett. I just feel like a guy that he's got a good head on his shoulders. I mean, I can't say that Kenny Pickett doesn't, because I really don't know, but it just feels like Malik Willis has what it takes to come in and make an immediate impact for the team that he's on. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to pull a Joe Burrow and, in his second year lead the team to a Super Bowl. No, I don't think so. But, with a player that's got a good head on his shoulders and everything, those are the types of players, especially at the quarterback position, that tend to thrive well immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see where he goes. I mean, I'm gonna be a fan. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really interested to see where his story goes. I've heard other teams like the Falcons. I've heard the Steelers. So I mean, those are some places. If you were to go there, I think it would. I think he's going to be the player of kind of the guys we've heard of that's going to really shine. Looking at other offensive players, going just with the rest of the offensive side of the football, I'm going to go with a wide receiver here. I think the guy that fits the bill is George Pickens out of Georgia. The player comp is Keenan Allen, so that's already a big leg up. He's tall, guy's a great frame, he's got the speed. Now, he did have an ACL injury that limited him to 4 games in 2021, so that's obviously a red flag. But the mock drafts I've seen have him going to the Chiefs at the end of the first round. Todd McShay had him at one point going to the Colts. The Packers have 2 first-round picks and need a wide receiver too. So where Pickens is projected, I kind of with this offensive pick and this defensive pick, I did kind of like fall victim to looking at the mock drafts and being like, well, yeah, if he goes there, that's going to be a real big impact. But I think, I already think these guys are going to be impact players, but also seeing where they're possibly going to go, I think that's a factor as well. Because of George Pickens, like, I'll have less of a value on him if he were to go like to the Jaguars. Like, I don't think that's going to be as good of an impact right away as he would if he went to like the Packers or the Chiefs or the Colts.
I don't know. I mean, Trevor Lawrence isn't a bad quarterback. That's the thing. It's just they need more. They actually spent quite a bit of money on wide receiver this past offseason, so I wouldn't expect them to go wide out, but they need help on the O-line.
For sure. But yeah, I think he's going to end up as a solid piece no matter solid player no matter what team he goes to.
So I'm sticking with wide receiver as well, except I'm going to the Big Ten and Ohio State. I got Garrett Wilson. Not Garrett Wilson. I'm getting my Ohio State wide receivers confused. My other first round Ohio State wide receiver, Chris Olave. Chris Olave has, he's played, I felt like he was at Ohio State forever. I mean, let's just be honest. I felt like the guy was like, I don't know, there forever, and he still had eligibility he passed up on. Look, he's a proven winner. He's got speed. He knows how to run routes extremely well. He's able to beat the opposing team's best defender game in and game out. Everybody knew going against Ohio State, Chris Olave was the go-to guy, hands down the go-to guy. Now, some people might say, well, maybe it was Garrett Wilson. Okay, well, it's Ohio State. They have an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position, okay? But Chris Olave, I don't know. For me, it just feels like he's going to be the next Terry McLaurin, where you don't really he's not the guy that you're expecting to be the biggest immediate impact from that core of wide receivers coming out of Ohio State, but ends up being it, and ends up being one of these, just an absolute stud wide receiver right out of the gates. I think he's kind of built in the molds of Michael Thomas, and Ohio State always has that one wide receiver that comes out that just tears the doors off the NFL at first, and I see him being that guy this year.
Before we move on to defense, a couple of things in the chat from Dan. First, to clear some things up, the Dolphins traded their first this year to the Eagles to move up to get Jalen Waddle last year, and their other first round, and their other first to get Tyreek Hill. So the Tyreek Hill trade and the trade to the is kind of the main thing there. He also says the first quarterback taken will be Willis to the Steelers, and they'll probably trade up to 13 or 15 to get him, and that's, I mean, I think there's a chance that Willis goes before then, but I think the Steelers.
See,
Steelers
we were
trade up.
talking, yeah, we were talking off air. I was looking at my top 10 mock draft and I was like, I'm looking at it again and I'm like, oh, 6 with the Carolina Panthers. That is a key spot to keep an eye on because that's either the Carolina Panthers may take him or Pittsburgh's going to try to jump up into the top 10 because they're going to get nervous that they may lose him and he gets taken. I think, typically you see somebody move into the top 10, it feels like, to grab that quarterback. Malik Willis is going to be that quarterback people try to move for. And for some reason, I just feel like the 6th spot is where it all breaks loose. It all goes bonkers. Because once somebody makes that move, the other teams that are quarterback needy are going to be throwing future draft picks and current draft picks to whoever does not need a quarterback because they are going to try to get at these guys. I mean, there is 3 guys that could honestly be taken in the first round, and they don't want to lose out on those. So that's why I also think a team like the Colts sitting at 42, right around where some other quarterbacks could be sitting for these needy teams, maybe in a good spot to trade back again as well later on. But we all know what teams do when it comes to a quarterback. They get silly and are willing to sell the farm for it to not work out. But I feel like if you're going to try to sell the farm for one of the quarterbacks, it's definitely Malik Willis.
Also to clear up the whole Ball State thing we were talking about earlier. So obviously you're right on the whole Liberty thing, but also the game I was thinking of where Willis caught the game-winning touchdown was against Buffalo. So for whatever reason, I thought that was against Liberty, but it was against. This was in 2012.
That's when we were doing Cardinal.
No, that was 2011.
Oh, okay, 2011.
It went 2000 and okay, so 2010 was the year we did Cardinal College together. Because it was 2009, I was in the band, so that was that season. That was when the season started with the big loss to North Texas, like on the first game of the year. And then the next year,
2010 was my first year.
Yeah, 2010 was Cardinal College game day. Well, 2011 through 13 was, or 2010 through 12 was Cardinal College game day for me. But so yeah, 2010.
I was there 2011.
So, but then who was there 2010? I don't know. We'll figure this out at some point, but I thought it was, yeah, that's true. Cause yeah, it was okay. So 2010, that's right. You're right. You remember better than I do. You've got a better memory, I guess. Cause yeah, I forgot 2011, was you, me, and Rankle, right?
B Pope.
Okay. I'm thinking of the year prior where it was me, Rankle, and Nick Russ.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we've got it all down. Now we're good.
And then the following year, after you, me, and B Pope, was
Ian Sean Stewart.
Year you got fired.
Yes, I got fired, and then I got fired. All right. So looking at the defense, Florida, who I'm going to go with is Florida State edge rusher Jermaine Johnson II. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year in 2021. He's the first team All ACC last year with 18 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, 70 tackles, 2 fumbles. I mean, the dude is an absolute force, on the defensive line. I've seen mock drafts with him headed to the Ravens, Cardinals, and Seahawks. I mean, the Ravens and Seahawks are teams who have traditionally good defenses, but were bad last season. The Cardinals were ranked 11th last year in yards per game. So, while I think Johnson's going to be a stud regardless, the fact that he's projected to go to those places really have me excited.
Yeah, so this draft is deep with really talented defenders. Wide receivers and defense is really deep for that. But I'm going with somebody that at one point was picked as high as number 1 overall and now is looking to be picked potentially anywhere between the number 3 all the way to 29. That's Purdue defensive end George Karlaftis. Yes, he may not be the flashiest of the players on the board. If you want flashy, Kayvon Thibodeau, in my opinion. Yeah, he may have not had the best numbers of anybody on the board, but the man was also triple teamed and held every game. But look, George Karlaftis is a guy that he's a workhorse, first off. He is somebody that hasn't been playing football too long, And since he's picked it up, I mean, it's just, he's got all the physical attributes you want in a football player, but also he's just, like I said, he's a workhorse. He is constantly striving to get better. He has a high floor and an even higher ceiling. He's got power moves down. He does need to work on some quickness and finesse moves, but his power moves are down. And the thing about George Karlaftis compared to some of the other defensive ends, he is good at getting to the passer, but he's also good at stopping the run. He is a 4-down player, or I mean, technically 3 downs. You don't have to substitute him out. He's not a situational defensive end like some other guys can be. Some other guys are strictly, they rush the passer. So you may not have them in first and second down. They're going to be out there for 3rd down. Whereas Karlaftis is out there every play that you need him out there. Some of the comparisons for him are the Bosa brothers, but he may be a little bit more polished than the Bosas, is one of the things I've heard from draft experts, which is kind of amazing, because the Bosas were very, very, very highly regarded, and have had pretty good NFL careers.
I mean, both won defensive rookie of the year, because I was looking for that, like what positions on defense have won defensive rookie of the year, and when defensive end doesn't win very often, but the last 2 winners were the Bosa brothers.
Right. And it depends on which team George Karlaftis ends up landing with, if he could be a potential defensive rookie of the year.
True.
But I mean, because some mocks have him going to the Jets or the Giants. If that's the case, both of those teams will not utilize him properly.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I was like, it won't really matter if he goes off, but yes, I do agree that like if they don't utilize
him properly. So like, I'll spoiler alert, in my mock draft, I have him going 9th to Seattle, just because he seems like the type of player that fits a Seattle defense. But yeah, I think he's going to have the biggest impact. It was tough. I went back and forth between him and Derek Stingley and Ahmad Gardner. There's quite a few, but I just had to go with my gut on this one. And he's a guy that any level he's played in, he's stepped right in and been an impact player right out of the gate. And that he was that way in college, in high school, even when he was extremely raw. And I feel like it's going to carry right on into the pros.
Well, before we go into some hot or cold takes as well as our mock draft, let's go ahead and hear about our friends of the show. First of all, from Anchor, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or mobile device, and will distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need in a podcast in one place. Also, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game. You can hear it weekly on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be heard. Board games build bridges. Also, remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. We're also on TikTok and the YouTube. YouTube videos have been doing really well. You guys showed a lot of love on the Colts mock draft podcast, so thank you guys for tuning into that. Also, TikTok got some good ideas coming up for the month of May, so you won't want to miss it over there. Remember, you can watch us live every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. We had Dan in the chat earlier. Carter's 2 comes in and says the best pick of the draft, hands down, is Nathan Peterman. He did so much charity for defenders. That's completely correct. Nathan Peterman, of course, the guy who threw, 6 interceptions in his NFL debut, or 5 interceptions the first half, something like that. He had a lot of interceptions. And remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course podcast. So let's get into hot or cold. So if you're not familiar with that on the program, we give a take and tell you whether or not it's a hot take or a cold. So The first take that we're going to get out of the way here, 3 quarterbacks will be taken in the first round, hot or cold. For me, that is a hot take. I've looked at 5 mock drafts, and all but one have at least 3 quarterbacks going in the first round. That's 5 mock drafts this week, by the way. We've looked for them. I've looked at them, for the Colts one. I looked at a few more and all that stuff, and they all look to have, at least 3 quarterbacks going in the first round. 2015 was the last draft where was the last draft where less than 3 quarterbacks were selected. Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota went off the board with the first 2 picks. That was it for the first round. So it's been 7-8 years since that's happened. The Lions, Texans, Giants, Panthers, Falcons, Seahawks. You could throw the Saints in there too. Those are all teams that you can make a case for needing a quarterback. The Lions, Giants, Texans, and Saints have all multiple first rounders, which I think makes it more likely that they will take a quarterback with one of those picks. So you've got quarterback needy teams with multiple picks in the first round that are those quarterback needy teams. So I think it's going to happen. 3 quarterbacks in the first round.
This is a hard one to say hot or cold on.
That's why I included it.
I know. I want to say cold.
Be contrarian, say cold.
I'm gonna say cold because I'm more room temperature, but I'm gonna say 2 because when I look at the potential of the quarterbacks, I feel like it's Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. Well, Malik Willis 1, Kenny Pickett 2. Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder can be. I've seen them even fall in the early second round in some mocks. The only reason why I say lukewarm or room temperature is just exactly like I said earlier. All it takes is one of those quarterback needy teams to make a move to go get somebody, and everybody else that needs a quarterback will panic and start making moves to grab their guy. So you're going to see some quarterbacks that are going to be picked well above where they should be picked, and guys that shouldn't fall into the second round because of these teams that will ultimately panic. And that's what happens every year, especially in a draft class where there's not a ton of depth at the quarterback position. Teams will panic. So I'm going to say room temperature. My gut tells me only 2. My brain, I guess my gut tells me 2, but the logic is telling me no. There's probably going to be 3 or 4.
Your mind's telling you no, but your body is telling you yes. That's what you're.
That's what I've been told all my life.
It's like Carter says in the chat. He says desperation can do stupid things. Although he says that he thinks only 2 teams, Seattle and Carolina, will take quarterbacks in the first round. I
think Pittsburgh is desperate.
Right, and just like you said, once it's we see it every year in fantasy football drafts, fantasy baseball, whatever fantasy sport you see. One guy takes a defense in the 6th round. And then here comes all the defenses off the board. You were gonna take your defense in the 9th round. Well, guess what? Now you got to take it this time because all the defenses are gone. Now you're left with the Giants. You're like, okay, well, whatever. I can wait till the 9th round for that.
Well, and the funny thing is these teams that are constantly quarterback needy are typically the same teams,
right?
And they're the ones that are constantly panicking and making unnecessary movements for guys that are they really going to make that difference? Is Matt Corral really going to be that guy that gets you out of quarterback purgatory? Is Desmond Ridder? Maybe. When the teams are going to start panicking is when a player like Sam Howell gets taken way before he should.
The Blake, like we saw Blake Bortles get taken at 3, gonna see Howell taken at
Now
10.
I guess that's a bad example because I think Howell has got tremendous upside. This is a guy that at one point we were looking at as a potential top 10 pick. So I guess that's a bad example. But I mean, it could happen. I mean, I'm trying to think of, I don't know. If all of a sudden Jack Cohn is taken in the third round, then we know teams are panicking.
Right. No, I'm with you.
No, that's not going to happen. That's a very
well. I mean, you talk about these quarterback needy teams. I mean, it's kind of like what Cleveland did for a long time before they got Baker. I mean, they were like, all right, it's Brady Quinn. All right, it's it's Johnny Manziel. Okay, now it's this
Jimmy Clausen.
Jimmy Clausen. Yeah, like they're just going like they're gonna keep just drafting guys until one of them works out. And
I mean, technically, you can throw Baker Mayfield into that conversation for them.
Yeah, that's what
they traded everything away for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's what Carter says in the chat as well. He says Pittsburgh said they may wait for Mayfield, and I don't know. I think they'd almost rather go after somebody in the draft. So we'll see.
Look, if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm looking to figure out how I can land Malik Willis. I don't know why. It just feels like Malik Willis is a fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't understand why I feel that way. But it's just like, man, these two are like a match made in heaven for each other. But I can't figure out why. An established
coach, established, well-run team. Like he's got talent around him in Najee Harris and Claypool and all those guys. Like he's got good talent around him, a good defense, a good coach. Like that's somebody you're not, like I said, that's a team where he goes to and he doesn't have to be, Trevor Lawrence.
That's another reason why I mean, everything honestly hinges on the Pittsburgh Steelers and whether or not teams will panic. Unless, I don't know. It's such a crapshoot, to be honest. Because if teams start to panic at quarterback, then watch a player like George Karlaftis fall all the way to the Green Bay Packers, who would be like, yes, please, we need edge rushing help. So,
well, you know what? You are a master of transitions and segues.
I know.
The Green Bay
I knew it was coming. I just served that one up on a platter for
the Green Bay Packers are the subject of the next take, which is the Packers will finally take a wide receiver in the first round. And I'm gonna go ahead and say cold. It's a cold take. The Packers traded, just to update everyone, if you've been living under a rock and don't know what's happening, which weird podcast for you to click onto if you're not following everything. But the Packers traded away Devontae Adams this offseason. They have 2 first-round picks. Of the mock drafts I've looked at, nearly all of them have Green Bay taking at least one wide receiver on Thursday. Some have the Packers taking 2, which personally I think if I was a fan at least of the Green Bay Packers, that's what I would want, is for them to load up on quarterbacks.
They don't have anybody.
Wide receivers.
They don't have anybody.
No, they've got Randall Cobb.
Their wide receiver room is more diminished than the Colts wide receiver room.
Saying something. Their defense was top 10 in yards per game and passing yards per game. They were 11th in rushing yards per game. Their O-line was ranked 14th by Pro Football Focus. So, like, this is to say that all indications should be that they should take a wide receiver. I mean, our offensive line is solid. Our defense was great last year. We don't have any wide receiver talent. Everything's telling you there's no way the Packers screw this up, right? I mean,
and you just paid your quarterback half of your cap.
But this is all to say that this will be, like I said, this will be the year that makes the most sense since they haven't drafted a first-round wide receiver since 2002. It's been 20 years. So think about the fact that, like, they still had...
Who even was it?
I can't remember. I saw it when I looked it up, but I can't. I know. I'm not I'm a bad noodle.
If you're going to bring up 20 years, you better have a name.
Joe Jaravicius. That was just the first that popped into my head. It's not him.
So it was definitely not Joe Jaravicius. He was retiring around that time.
Was he?
I don't know. It feels like
I think Joe Jaravicius was on the Buccaneers team that won the Super Bowl, and that was 2002. Yeah. I mean, he probably was wrapping up his career, but I don't think he retired because I think he had a stint with the Browns as well. That was after the Super Bowl. But I'm gonna go contrarian here. I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm gonna say that the streak continues. You could make the argument for them to select offensive line, and some experts I've seen them have Green Bay selecting defense in the first round, and with them having the 28th pick in a deep wide receiver class, I could also see them trading the 28th pick to acquire more picks down the road, especially with 8 teams not having a first round selection. So the writing is kind of on the wall. Javon Walker, which I have heard of Javon Walker.
Yeah, I have too.
Carter's said he hasn't, but he's coming through in the clutch for us, getting that name in the chat there. So I'm trusting you implicitly, Carter's, that's correct. But I think it sounds right. I remember the name started with a J of the guy, so I think that
if I remember right, he played for the Packers and the Broncos.
So yeah, I mean,
is that a yes? Just you don't even remember.
No, I know he played for the Packers. I can't remember if he played for the Broncos.
For some reason, I want to say the Broncos. I don't know why.
But yeah, I mean, I think the writing's on the wall where they could be like, okay, deep wide receiver class, we're gonna nab who we want at the position that we want first. Then we're gonna trade back into Friday to acquire, because that'll mean they get more draft picks next year, most likely, extra draft pick or 2 this year. So I could see that very well happening where they say, okay, we're going to draft, another need at 21, and then we're going to trade 28 to somebody else. So that way we can get because it astounds me that 8 teams don't have a first round pick. So I can't see any like those teams not doing anything. So I think the writing's kind of on the wall for the Packers to potentially not pick a wide receiver, even though everything's telling them they should.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a cold take as well, especially considering I feel like there will be a run on quarterbacks and some of these higher end defenders will fall to them. Also, I don't feel like they will take 2 players in the first round either, because I don't know if they necessarily have the cap space to be able to hold 2 first round contracts. You got to remember, they are paying a lot for Aaron Rodgers. Now, obviously, a logical thinking person would go, well, you're paying that much for your quarterback. You better have some people he can throw the ball to, because right now they don't. But like you said, and I've said it too, this is a very deep draft for wide receiver. I mean, you can get really talented wide receivers in the 3rd, 4th round. Matter of fact, one of the wide receivers I've seen slotted to them later on as a good fit for them is David Bell out of Purdue. So, I mean, look, it's an all-American wide receiver right there. You can't really, it's like a 3rd or 4th round pick for you. But yes, you are right. There are a lot of teams that do not have a first round pick. And with Green Bay being so tight in cap space, the ability for them to gain future picks or cheaper picks in this year's draft may be too much for them to pass up on. And using that the 21st pick, if a defender, a bigger name defender or a offensive lineman falls to them, I don't think anybody should be really slotted around 21 on the offensive line, but defense, you could see somebody fall to them.
So Javon Walker, he was taken in the 2002 draft by the Packers out of Florida State. He played from 2002 to 2005 for the Packers. He did play for the Broncos from 2006 to 2007. Wow. Look at that. And then for the Oakland Raiders from 2008 to 2009, and then played for the Vikings in 2010. That is the last wide receiver that the Green Bay Packers selected in the first. So there you go. So final take here. One of the 8 teams without a first-round pick will make a selection on Thursday, i.e. the first round. Bears, Browns, Broncos, Colts, Raiders, Rams, Dolphins, 49ers all do not have a pick in the first round. And I'm actually going to say this is a hot take. There are some teams who will be making their second selection towards the end of the night, Thursday, where I think a trade could happen. We mentioned the Packers. They have 2 first-rounders, 11 picks total, so they could decide to add bulk, like we mentioned, just a few minutes ago. The Chiefs have picked 29 and 30. They have 2 second-rounders, 2 third-rounders, 2 fourth-rounders, so they could bulk up really a lot for the future. I mean, like I said before, if I'm the Chiefs general manager, which obviously I'm not, but if I were, I would be like, all right, what are the 5? We have 5 extra picks that we normally would not have. what are the 5 picks that I am the least attached to, and maybe that aren't past the 5th round? Because obviously, I mean, we're not attached to our 7th round pick. Well, you're right. But what picks am I absolutely not attached to at all? Am okay. I mean, that's the Kansas City Chiefs right there. So they could bulk up for the future. They and the Packers are 2 playoffs teams who are putting the finishing touches on their roster to try to make another Super Bowl run. So I feel like they could try to, they may capitalize and set themselves up for future seasons as well. The Lions also, they have the 2nd and 32nd pick. They have They have a 2nd, 2/3, 2/6. They could turn their pick 32 into even more picks this year. So they could try to emulate what the Jaguars have, which is 12 picks. They could say, okay, you know what, one of these other teams will sacrifice our 2nd pick in the 1st round for more picks later on in the draft. Now, teams that I'm very confident will not trade back into the 1st round. First of all, the Colts. That would mean giving away more draft capital, which Chris Ballard doesn't like to do, so I don't see that happening. The Raiders have only 5 picks this year. The Dolphins have only 4, so those are 2 teams that I think are out on trying to trade back into the 1st round. The Rams, they don't care about the draft at all. they don't care. They're like, oh, wake us up on Saturday. We'll start making picks then. And then the Browns. They have 2/3 and 2 7th rounders, so I don't think that's enough to trade back into the 1st round. They could try to trade away future picks, but they already gave quite a bit of their future away to also acquire Deshaun Watson. So those are some teams. The Browns, of those 4, are probably the most likely to do it, or of those 5, but I don't see that happening. So that leaves the Bears, Broncos, and 49ers. Now, selfishly, I kind of want the Bears to trade back into the 1st round. I want them to try to make some crazy play for Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, just for the Burrow to Chase, Fields to one of the receivers he threw to in college, kind of that factor. So I think they only have 2 2nd rounders and 2 5th rounders that I could see as far as having extra picks. So I think they're the least likely, but. You could talk yourself into dealing with the Chiefs. Like I said, I'd love for them to go bonkers and trade back into the 1st round to grab one of the Ohio State receivers. The Broncos have 2/3, 2/4, so I think they could package their 2nd and one of their 3rds. I could see that happening in a season where they've got Russell Wilson. They're trying to make a run, so they try to trade back into the 1st round to get somebody. And then the 49ers have 2/3, 3 and 3 6th-round picks. So they could package 3 or more of those picks if they wanted to. So I just find it hard to believe that, you've got a 4th of the league that's not drafting on Thursday. I cannot imagine all 8 of those teams not doing something to try to get back into the 1st round. So I think one of those teams will go back into the 1st round and grab a pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of those teams will definitely be picking. Honestly, I think it's going to either be the Browns, maybe, or the 49ers, mostly because they have players on their rosters that want traded and they are trying to get 1st round picks for those players. I think the more likely of the 2 would be the San Francisco 49ers in trading away Deebo Samuel and acquiring a 1st round pick in the process. So I'm going to say, yes, the 49ers will be picking in the 1st round one way or another come Thursday night.
Yeah. I'm all aboard on that. Yeah, cough, Deebo, cough.
And Colts fans, stop saying we need to go after Deebo Samuel or else I'm not going to be a fan anymore. Then you don't have the capital to trade. Bye. And 2, Deebo wants a massive contract, massive.
A debilitating contract that will hamstring the Colts for years to come.
That's not Chris Ballard.
No,
at all.
Not at all.
And that shouldn't be.
Look,
I'm okay with that 100%.
In the past on this podcast, we've talked about, should they go out and get Amari Cooper or Le'Veon Bell when those trades were going down, when Le'Veon Bell was putting the eye emojis on Pat McAfee's tweets or whatever it was. At the time, there was a time and place on this podcast where I was like, oh yeah, they should definitely go for those players. But now I'm like, no, it's got to be.
But at those times, the contracts for wide receivers and running backs were not astronomical through the roof. Teams are overpaying right now for wide receiver help because of the deals like the Tyreek Hill deal. And I think the Devontae Adams deal, he got paid.
Yeah.
So and there's been some deals with wide receivers this offseason that have really skewed the market. And players like Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin now are like, we want that money. And it's like, oh boy, especially how can you demand that kind of money when the wide receiver field is so deep in this year's draft? It's like, okay, we'll get more draft picks to go get 3 of you,
right?
For what it's gonna way less than what it's gonna cost us for you.
And like, fine, I've always been, a guy who's been like, hey, you'll get your bag, but how can you? I mean, Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill have done it and been the guys. Like, I have no qualms paying those guys because they have been obvious different. Now, granted, I mean, the 49ers aren't where they are without Deebo but at the same time, like,
they also still have George Kittle.
They have George Kittle, but like, Deebo hasn't done it for as long as Devontae, and like, he's not been the guy for as long for his team. So I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but I'm saying, like, after 1 year, like, or 1 or 2 years.
If maybe Terry McLaurin does deserve it. I mean, he's averaged 1,000 yards every season he's been in the league, and he's had 5 different quarterbacks.
True.
So, I mean, and he's been the guy or the only guy for them. So he probably wants to get paid before Carson Wentz comes in there and absolutely destroys.
I'm about to have 657 yards next year, so I'd like to get paid this year. Thanks.
On like 500 targets because he's gonna underside arm, left hand throw that ball.
He's gonna try to like fling it. He's gonna try to
He's gonna throw it like it's frisbee golf.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into, before we wrap up here, our mock draft. So we're gonna do it exactly like last week. We're gonna run through our picks here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get mine on the screen here. Here, I need to make it smaller. That's what she said. I don't know.
That's not what she said.
I mean, hey, everybody's got their preferences, right?
I guess.
I hope. So
not the size of the boat, it's the motion of the ocean.
Exactly. All right, so we're starting it off hot here because before the podcast, you made me aware of many people taking my first round, my one.
Well, I just found that out today.
Right.
I just saw that today.
So you know what? I think the sentiment of where I'm going to go with it still holds up, though. So I have at number 1, I've got the Jaguars taking Alabama offensive tackle Evan Neal. Now, there's been some stuff regarding his health that has taken teams off of their. But that also could be.
I will also say, it could be smoke and mirrors that these GMs send out this time of year to get people hot off the scent of a certain prospect.
That is a good point. So I've got the Jaguars taking Evan Neal. The Jags had the 24th ranked offensive line last season. Neal is a big dude. 6'7", 337 pounds. He's fast. He moves well. He's versatile as well, as he played guard and tackle in college. So, I mean, they need to protect Trevor Lawrence, and this can be a Quentin Nelson type player who can be an instant impact on the Jaguars offensive line. So, if all the health stuff...
He doesn't have the mean streak like Quentin Nelson, though.
True. But, I mean, if...
He's an impact. He could be an impact player like
right.
Quentin.
So, I mean, he can play anywhere, too. So, I mean, maybe that won't necessarily translate as well to the NFL, but still, it'll be, he's going to have that big impact on the offensive line. And I think, I think regardless, the Jaguars need to go offensive line. Because I think they need to protect Trevor Lawrence. And, because normally, in maybe a draft like this, I would say, hey, they maybe need to go get the guy that's going to, go get a wide receiver or something like that, because, I mean, you don't typically see that number 1 overall, but at the same time, or maybe trade back and get a wide receiver or something like that, because they
did just spend quite a bit of money at
that's
wide
what I'm
receiver,
saying. That's
though.
what I'm going to say. That's why I think it makes it even more imperative that, you need to go get your offensive line. You need to take that care of that ASAP. Pick number 2, I've got the Lions taking Michigan defensive edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson. I fell under the pressure here. I'm not going to lie. The mock drafts I've used for research for this podcast all have Hutchinson going in the first 2 picks. He never fell past number 2. And for good reason. I mean, the dude was a monster. He had a 14-sack season for the Wolverines en route to the program's first college football playoff appearance. Lions anchor the trenches with their first pick in the last 2 seasons, and I'm here for it. I mean, you get your, a guy who's going to anchor your defensive line, a guy who is going to anchor your offensive line last year in Penei Sewell. You get Aiden Hutchinson this year. I mean, that's going to be really big for those two sides of the ball. Pick 3, I had the Texans taking Oregon edge rusher Kayvon Thibodeau. The Texans need an edge rushers, and with Hutch off the board, Thibodeau is a great number 2. He had 12 sacks and 23.5 tackles for losses in 2019 and 2020. He had an injury plague 2021, but still ended up with 7 sacks, so that's pretty wild. He's fast, powerful, and looking back at history, the Texans love them some good edge rushers. I mean, J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, Mario Williams. So they like to go in that direction, and I think that's where they go with the first round here. Pick number 4. A lot of this is kind of chalk early on, I will admit. With like where I
not mine, and I'm actually looking at mine. And I'm like, wait a second, I have one team picking the same position twice.
Hey, you know what? If they need it, right?
Oh boy.
So at number 4, I have the Jets taking Notre Dame safety Kyle Hamilton. He's coming off of injury, but in 2020 he was all ACC tackles. He had an interception and 6 pass breakups. Last season he still wound up with 3 interceptions. So again, wild that he had those kind of stats with considering he had an injury. He was a Chuck Bednarik Award finalist, and he which is the top defender in football. Jets need a safety. They need a lot of defense, to be honest. And Hamilton is a great one. Player comp is Cam Chancellor. So, I mean, you have the opportunity to go get a future Cam Chancellor, you go do it. Pick number 5, New York Giants. I have them taking NC State offensive tackle Akeem Ikwanu. Pro Football Network says he's better as a guard, but he was left tackle for 2021 and earned All-American and All-Conference honors. But all that doesn't matter because the G-men need O-line in general. So wherever he lines up, again, kind of like with the Jaguars, I mean, they need offensive linemen. It doesn't matter where they play. Just, draft them, put them where they fit the best, and let everything take it from there because he's the best available on the board, as far as my mock draft goes. So I went with him. So they need to address their offensive line really badly, and I think they go there with first pick in the top 10. Pick number 6, the Panthers. I've got them taking Mississippi State offensive lineman Charles Cross, another team that literally needs to focus on their entire offensive line.
Wow, that's the same. Wow,
yeah,
I picked him too.
We were on the same wavelength. And this is also because they did invest a lot in going to get Sam Darnold, and while they still are kind of in the market still for do they go get Jimmy Garoppolo? Do they go get Baker Mayfield? I think they're going to go with a veteran no matter what. Kind of. I mean, they may draft a quarterback, but all signs at least right now point to them, going with a veteran to come in and be their quarterback, whether it be Darnold or Mayfield or Garoppolo. So I think they decide to protect him with an offensive lineman. Cross compares to Tristan Wirfs in play style. He was first team All SEC, great quickness and footwork. They could go quarterback, like I said. But I don't think they do. I think they go offensive. The second pick for the G-men in the first 10, pick number 7, they go with Cincinnati corner Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I wanted to go more O-line here, to be honest. You said you had him taking the same position. I can see the Giants doing that. I mean, they need offensive linemen. I mean, they won't, but it would be justified if they did.
Mine can't be justified. Mine really can't. Mine was an absolute brain fart when it came to picking.
Hey, sometimes the Jets, as far as drafting, have always been kind of a brain fart. So,
well, both New York teams. Let's just be honest.
True. But they already had them taking. I already had them taking a tackle, and any other lineman here would be a reach. So that's why I had them not going there. I also kind of wanted to go wide receiver, but it's a deep wide receiver draft. So I'm going with another G-men need, which is corner. Sauce was a first-team All-American, All-American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year, 40 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions. The Giants were 15th in pass defense last season, and I think they could even be better with Sauce Gardner out on the field. Pick number 8. I will admit, I did a little, puppet master kind of thing because of where I wanted my next pick to go. So right here,
forced to trade.
I'm not really forced to trade, but I was like, hey, I could justify taking my number 9. I don't know why I'm like acting like it's not on the screen. I wanted Malik Willis to not go to the Falcons and go to the team that I haven't projected on. So I was like, I mean, the Falcons could. They just got Mariota. They could justify going somewhere else with their first pick. So I have them taking Georgia edge rusher Trayvon Walker at pick number 8. Now he's one here recently that has been kind of skyrocketing, to the top of draft boards and stuff like that. Or here recently, as far as like, I think he was the guy who they were now projecting to possibly go at number 1. The Falcons were 26th ranked. They were the 26th ranked defense in terms of yards per game. So who better to draft than Trayvon Walker out of Georgia? He compares to Ziggy Ansah, if you remember him coming out of Missouri and then going to Detroit. He's projected to be gone by the 3rd pick in some mock drafts. So, I mean, you can justify me kind of manipulating the draft a little bit by saying that, like, hey, if this guy's still on the board at 8, like, hey, we just got Mariota. We've got Cordarrelle Patterson. We can justify not going quarterback here because this top 3 potential talent fell to us at 8. And this was all to coordinate pick number 9, the Seahawks going with Liberty quarterback Malik Willis. They already gave, I already gave a stat line earlier. They need a quarterback after trading away Russell Wilson. Who do they get? Another shorter, mobile quarterback
with a good arm,
who will be an outstanding presence in the locker room. So, I mean, that's why I kind of wanted him to go there because I think that would be a fantastic fit. Because you trade a guy like Wilson away, and you're thinking like, okay, well, the Seahawks are being smart in the sense that like the top of that division is going to be the Cardinals, 49ers, Rams for the foreseeable future. The Seahawks are kind of fading away. But if they do a pick like this, I'm not saying that instantly puts them back in the hunt for the division, but that definitely still makes them a playoff contender in my mind. It still has Tyler Lockett to throw to, still has DK Metcalf to throw to, so going to an outstanding situation if he. And then pick number 10, I had another guy I mentioned earlier as an impact player in Florida State edge rusher Jermaine Johnson. Jets need an edge rusher. They had the worst defense in football last season. We discussed his accolades earlier. He's a monster. He did transfer from Georgia to Tallahassee, and while with the Bulldogs, he was a linebacker. So there you go, impact player. Wherever he goes, wherever he plays, he's going to be an absolute animal. So I've got Jermaine Johnson going in pick 10 to the Jets.
So I'm just gonna say, while you're pulling mine up, I am 100% not confident in my top 10. There's a few picks that I'm very confident in. There are a few. Number 1 overall, I have Ikem Ekwonu, tackle from North Carolina State, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, Jacksonville has their quarterback of the future. They should have learned from their division rival, the Indianapolis Colts, that when you have your quarterback of the future, your cornerstone piece, you do what you need to do to protect that piece. The Colts did not. And now they are on what? Quarterback number 5? Number 6? Since Andrew Luck retired?
Andrew Luck's on TV looking like he needs to eat a cheeseburger.
Oh my gosh, yeah. All these Colts fans that haven't seen him, like maybe Andrew Luck will come out of retirement. No. Guys, Andrew Luck can't step on a football field anymore because he will be destroyed. Yeah. He is a tiny man now. A tall, thin man. So I'm very confident on that one. I feel like this one very well could be Evan Neal, though. This could be smoke and mirrors coming from Jacksonville. They have to go offensive line. They have to get somebody. They have to beef that up to protect Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, I'm not 100% confident on this one. I really do believe it could be Aiden Hutchinson, but I'm going with Derek Stingley Jr. Honestly, I think he is probably the best defensive prospect in this entire draft. Detroit needs help anywhere. So you can't go wrong, really. And I think if you can get yourself a lockdown corner, that helps you.
Darius Slay was good on that defense. You get another type of player like him. That's a step in the right direction for sure.
Number 3, I have the Houston Texans taking Evan Neal. I dropped Evan Neal just mostly because of the word on the street surrounding him, but I don't really fully believe it too much. They as well. Yeah, they don't really have a quarterback right now. They don't really have anything right now. But if you're going to start somewhere, this is a team that does typically like to run the ball. So if you're going to start somewhere, you need to shore up your offensive line, get it right in the trenches, and then build from there. Number 4, I'm not confident in this one. I feel like this could have been Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau, but I went with Ahmad Gardner for the Jets, or Kyle Hamilton even. But I feel like with Kyle Hamilton coming off of an injury, there's just a little bit more unknown there. With Ahmad Gardner, this is a player that has played really well this past season, and then is also playing with a chip on his shoulder because, look, he's not one of the big guys, coming from one of the big guys. He's coming from Cincinnati. He's been overlooked a lot. So I like that type of player.
So both of us do have him go to New York, so that's nice.
Yeah, just different team.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Yeah, different teams.
By the way, I know you're about to get into your brain fart, but I am here for the 2 picks you have.
Well, because it could be like a Freeney Mathis situation.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. Like that's good bookends. I like it.
Yeah. So I do have the Giants taking Aiden Hutchinson at 5. They do need help there. They need help a lot of places. So I have them taking him. 6, I too have the Panthers taking Charles Cross. This is the pick that could be interesting because the Panthers could be that willing trade partner for a Pittsburgh Steelers or a team that is quarterback needy, because I'll get to the other team later, because there is a team that will take a quarterback in the first round. Even though I don't have them taking a quarterback, but when I think on it more, I'm like, yeah, that's a team that will take a quarterback. So this is where the top 10 could get all screwy. But I still have them taking Charles Cross because, look, you do have Sam Darnold. So you do have a serviceable quarterback. I mean, Sam Darnold's not a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not your franchise quarterback type player. But you do have a franchise type player on that roster that needs to be able to move the ball and move the ball effectively, and that's Christian McCaffrey. Charles Cross helps Christian McCaffrey more so than anything, and you've got to be looking at that. Next, this is where my brain fart came in. 7, the New York Giants.
I'll come in and defend you here. I mean, Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck, just saying, won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So.
And Jason Pierre-Paul.
Yeah. So
he was in there too. So I have defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau going to the New York Giants.
Hey, as a person who typically is the one that makes the brain farts, I can relate here. But
yeah.
like I said, Justin Tuck, Jason Pierre-Paul,
I will say,
Michael
when
Strahan,
you're trying to pick on these mock draft builders and everything, these simulators, when you're picking for all the top 10 teams and you have every player at your disposal,
right, yeah.
Essentially, you're just like, I have to applaud these GMs that can put together a board like that. I mean, obviously, I don't have the time to put together a board like they do. So this is what I came up with. And obviously, it's not great. So number 8, yes, the Falcons could take a quarterback here, but I feel like they have other needs. The one position I'm thinking on now, they probably would target here, if not trading back for it, is wide receiver, especially with the news of Calvin Ridley most likely being suspended for a period of a good amount of time for gambling on the NFL. But I have them taking Devontae Wyatt, an interior defensive tackle. Look, dude is a beast. Dude's a man. I mean, he makes these other big, large men look like boys. So if you can have a player like that, that's a tough one to pass up on. 9, the Seattle Seahawks. This one could be interesting. This is the team that, honestly, looking at this pick, I guess for me, I made the pick of them taking George Karlaftis. But when I think of Seattle, I think of really good defenses. So that would immediately what came to mind for me. But looking at this one a little bit deeper, this is where Malik Willis could go. And this is the team that will cause other teams to want to jump up and become trade partners with the Carolina Panthers or the New York Giants so they can take Malik Willis before the Seattle Seahawks do. Because look, Malik Willis is a perfect fit for the Seahawks. And they all know it. Yeah, everybody knows it, and everybody wants him as well. So that's the team that is going to cause things to get screwy because other teams will try to jump up ahead of them. So ultimately, I could see them taking a player like George Karlaftis because they'd be like, look, hey, let's build that defense back up again, and then we can go from there. At 10 for the Jets, I have them taking wide receiver Jamison Williams out of Alabama. In my opinion, Jamison Williams is hands down the number one wide receiver prospect in this entire draft. But this is also a player that I could see going to Atlanta. Atlanta has an affinity for picking Alabama wide receivers.
They do.
And turning it and having them be successful. But I don't see him getting out of the top 10. I mean, one thing the Jets have shown is they do need some weapons. And Jamison Williams is the number one weapon in this draft. So, yeah, there's my screwy top 10 that will most likely not happen. But like I said, I am very confident with my number one overall pick.
Well, and we typically – so I've stayed away from mock drafts in the past because, like, it's just so tough. Like you said, I mean, when you have every player at your disposal, it's kind of tough to – and it's also tough to not be like, well, I'd rather see this guy go here. So you can make the case for this guy to go there. So, I mean, it's all going to be kind of a – I mean, because literally you have to go into it with the mindset of, like, literally everyone's mock draft is going to be, you know, garbage by the time it's all said and done. No one's going to have – it's kind of like doing a bracket for college basketball.
Well, it's why Bud Light is doing a guess all 32 correctly and win $15 million.
Let's hop in on that real quick. I'll take a $15 million in Bud Lights, please. Thank you.
You know, I mean, you would have to $15 million in Bud Lights. You would probably need a 3-car garage to store all that.
A casket, because I will be dead.
Well, I'm not saying you're drinking $15 million of Bud Light in one sitting.
No. I know. I mean, who says I'm not gonna do that though? But yeah, I mean, it's all just kind of up in the air, so it's hard to go with.
Greg, you can't drink that much. I've been with you.
Yeah,
once the clock strikes midnight after you've been drinking beer, you are asleep.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I was like, I can't take $15 in Bud Lights, let alone 15 million. But yeah,
I have the New Year's Eve proof.
Yeah, very true, very true. Well, what a place to end it, right there. You know, that's the draft. That's the draft special. And you know, I hope everybody enjoys it on Thursday. It'll be a lot of fun to see where everybody does end up, because like that's kind of the start of the next season. You start getting pumped up, you know, seeing who you get, what's everything going to look like. We kind of speculate what we're going to see, and before too long, it'll be OTAs, it'll be preseason, it'll be all that fun stuff. So
yeah, that's going to be here before we know it.
Right. So that'll do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Remember that you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. Go to the YouTube channel if you're not already. Hit subscribe, ring the bell. Go to 3C Media on TikTok for some good content on there as well. Remember, you can watch our live podcast every single week on twitch.tv/CraigCrash. And then remember, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
Next week, we will be recapping the draft. We'll be, going into, who went where, talking about, the guys the Colts were able to get, and basically wrapping a bow on the NFL draft. So it'll be a lot of fun. We hope to see you then. But until then, have a good one, everybody.